Hi, One Lit Teacher here to talk some more about one of my very favorite pieces of literature, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. If you're a student or someone who's coming back to Shakespeare from a long time ago, I hope that this information will help you to digest the play and understand it better. If you're a teacher, I hope it will help you think about how to make the play more relevant to your students. I hope that you might want to collaborate with me. So I'd love to hear from you about your ideas and what you think of my ideas. And if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, then I'd be happy to send you some of the resources that I'm going to talk about in this video. So first of all, it's important to embrace and reframe the controversies in this play so that you can think about them in a modern context and see that many of them really are relevant today. So to create interest before reading or viewing, you could have discussions about a variety of different ideas and ask a lot of different questions. So for example, you could ask students to describe the likely reaction of their parents or other family members or friends to one of these or other scenarios. Ask something like, what would your parents say if you were dating someone of another race or ethnic background? Or you're dating someone of a different religion. You're dating someone who identifies as a different gender than the one assigned at birth. Or you're dating someone of a different political perspective. Or you're dating someone who is a hardcore fan of a rival sports team or a rival college or university. And these are obviously not of equal importance or equal weight. But it's important, I think, to give a list and give choices because then everyone hopefully can find something on the list that they might be able to relate to in terms of somebody that they know and care about having a reaction and what they would do about that reaction. You could also ask questions like, when, if ever, is it okay for teenagers or young adults to disregard their parents' wishes or to sneak around behind their backs? How can you tell if a source or an individual is giving you good advice that you should really follow? And what can you do if you're not sure that advice is sound and might even prove to be dangerous? This one's really relevant today, obviously, with the internet and the misinformation that's out there. But it's also important to talk about just how do you know if people that you actually know in your real life are giving you good information that you should follow, because after all, Romeo and Juliet get some very poor advice in this play from sources that they think are reliable, and that turns out to be a very bad mistake. It turns out to be fatal. Again, embrace and reframe the controversies in this play. You could have discussions while studying or viewing the play because it may take a while to move through it and make sense of it. So you could ask questions like, how seriously should teenagers take their love interests? For example, in what ways can dating impact your relationships with friends and family members? How can you tell the difference between love and lust? What can you do if someone is pressuring you to make a relationship more physical? That might be especially important for teenagers to talk about with others. In what ways can a physical relationship be more dangerous for teens than it is for adults? What are some ways to avoid disagreements or fights with bullies? When, if ever, is it okay for adults to befriend teens and keep secrets from the teens' parents? What should you do if a friend discusses or threatens suicide? When can you tell if a situation is too much for you or a friend to handle alone, and what should you do in that case? Before moving on, I want to pause and just highlight one of these I think is especially important. The idea of suicide ideation and suicide is an epidemic in modern times. And so it's really important that we not read or watch this play with others and just gloss over this. It's critical to discuss this so that people have an idea of what to do if someone else threatens suicide. Because after all, that happens multiple times in this play. Romeo and Juliet both talk about suicide and threaten in front of others to commit suicide. And unfortunately, nobody helps them through that, and we know how that turns out. During and after studying the play, you could also try low-risk or lighthearted activities that can lead to important discussions. You could use journaling. You could use RAFs, which is an acronym for Role, Audience, Format, Topic, in which you can ask students to make choices and then create pieces that they can share, maybe even around the school. So for example, you could be somebody on a board for an important issue, and you could make a public service announcement for students or others in the public. And it could be maybe a poster to inform them of something like the dangers of suicide or where they could go for suicide prevention help. They could create commercials for radio, television, YouTube for things like suicide or bullying or any of the other ideas that are related to this play. Also, another fun activity is adapting scenes from the play into more modern contexts to show that we understand what the characters are thinking and what they're going through, and we understand the situations deeply because we can move them into a different context. Also, a fun activity is responding to advice column letters. And the last two bullets here are things that I've used in the classroom that I would have resources for. I would be happy to share with you again if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about this scene adaptation assignment right now. So the scene adaptation assignment asks students to work in groups and reset one of the important scenes in the play into a modern context. And you can give some ideas. For example, Romeo and Juliet on The Bachelor, or Romeo and Juliet meet at the junior prom, or Super Bowl 56, the Montagues versus the Capulets on SportsCenter. Okay, something like this. And students can come up with their own ideas and rewrite a script, a shorter version of that scene, and then act it out, either live in the classroom or record it to be played in the classroom. So these are the directions for that activity, and I do have a rubric for this activity. So again, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, and you tell me that you're interested in this resource, I would be happy to send it to you. Another activity is the advice column activity. I have it labeled here, Dear Sonneteer, but as I'll point out in a few minutes, you could call it lots of different things, or you could have students vote on what to call it. Tell them to imagine that you're an advice columnist with a school newspaper like a Dear Abby or Ann Landers, and your job is to read the letters of those requesting your advice and then answer back with helpful suggestions. Now, we all know that our students may not read the newspapers, they may not be familiar with advice columns, and so you could perhaps give some examples from the newspaper. Tell them that their group or their class could vote to use their school mascot or come up with a creative name connected to Shakespeare or the play. So I suggested the Sonneteers or the Fighting Rivals. It could be the Writing Bards. Maybe each class will have a different idea, and that might make it fun to share between classes as well. Tell them it is important to discuss and analyze the given situations and to make sure that they understand so that they can reply responsibly. They should assume that the letter writer truly needs help and is likely to follow the advice. So even though some of these may seem fun or funny, the advice should be given seriously. Here's an example. Oh, again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, and I'd be happy to share this with you. An example, Dear Sonneteer, I just met the most heavenly guy. I mean, he is perfect. Not only is he gorgeous, but he also makes up all kinds of poetic stuff to say to me. He worships the ground I walk on. Oh, and did I mention how hot he is? The only problem is that I know my parents will never let me date him because they think he's from a bad family and will have a bad influence on me. Should I date him anyway? Please give me some advice. J. Capulet, Shakespeare High School, Verona. So again, this is one example of 8 different letters that I give students. Here's another. Dear Sonneteer, I need some advice about how to deal with a young girl who is like a daughter to me. You see, for the past week or so, I've been helping her sneak out of her house to meet a boy her parents don't approve of. I know this is wrong, but it feels right because I hate seeing her sad. Besides, he's not just any Romeo. He is really a nice boy. He's cute and rich too. What should I do? School nurse, Shakespeare High School, Verona. That's another example of 8 different letters that I share with students for the advice column. And here's one more. Dear Sonneteer, this dude named Tybalt wants to fight me. Now, I don't normally back down from a fight, but I'm trying to get together with his cousin, a real hottie named Juliet. But I can't tell Tybalt I don't want to fight him because I'm in love with his cousin. That would just make him hate me even more and really want to kill me. To make matters worse, My best friend, Mercutio, doesn't know about Juliet and really wants me to pummel Tybalt. Mercutio thinks I'd be letting him down if I backed away from a challenge. For now, I'm just trying to avoid this situation because I think I can get together with this girl, and if I do, everyone will eventually see things my way. But what should I do if this crazy kid puts me on the spot in front of my friends? R. Montague, Shakespeare High School, Verona. So again, that's a third sample of 8 different letters that I share with my students and have them respond to. A series of 8 letters that cover the major plot points and other complications in the play so that students are familiar with them in sort of a non-threatening way that helps them to understand the plot so they can dig deeper and just get beyond what's happening. You could use them as a pre-reading group activity and have students share the letters and the responses around the room, or you could sort of save them and meter them out one at a time for journaling and discussion as you work through the play and the similar situations arise in the play. So again, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, and request a copy, I'd be happy to send you a copy via email, and I'd also love to hear your ideas and your thoughts about my suggestions. So if you enjoyed this presentation on making Shakespeare relevant, please check out the rest of my playlist on Romeo and Juliet on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. I also have playlists about Shakespeare sonnets, about some of the poetry of John Donne. I'm adding to these all the time. And I have a playlist about how to approach poetry in general, how to use a technique which I love called color marking, and I'll just be adding more and more videos as I have time. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. Thank you.